This is the new Renault Duster that debuted internationally in 2017. Though based on the same B0 platform as the Duster that is known to us, Renault insists that what you see here is the second generation model. It has almost the same dimensions and boot space as the older Duster, but the designers insist that every body panel on this car is new. It has a higher ground clearance and retains the design philosophy of the original, but looks a tad bit beefier, especially in its facial features. But Renault hasn't brought that new global Duster to the Indian market. Now I am a little upset, like most of you Duster fans out there, but I also have a fair idea of why Renault could have done such a thing. But we'll come to that in a bit. For now, let's take a look at what is new, what is updated with this Duster that has been dropped into the Indian market. You will immediately notice the new headlamps of the Duster irrespective of the color that you see the car in. The new LED daytime running lamps have a pattern that is quite similar to the new Duster sold in Europe, but the Indian headlamps are smaller. The new detailing for the projector beam lamps adds a hint of sophistication too. Like it or not, but this outrageous grille is here to stay, and a similar design treatment will soon be seen on the Quid as well. The bumpers have been redesigned to look more modern, and I think the treatment has worked quite well. Move over to the rear and the changes to the tailgate seem overdone to me. To lose the drap treatment to the tailgate of the previous Duster, this one has been given plastic appliques on the tailgate, and to me it looks like an afterthought. The lower trims without these appliques look more elegant in my opinion. The LED tail lights could have mimicked the pattern seen on the headlights for better harmony. The side profile still remains the money shot for the Duster, with its hiking boot inspired shape and those chunky wheel arches which are now filled up by a new design for the 16-inch alloy wheels. It's got a new two-tone machine cut finish which seems to be getting a lot of popularity within this segment, so the Duster now gets it too. The silhouette of the Duster however has changed slightly now, and that is down to those bulges or the contours that you have on the bonnet, which have been put in place with the aim of reducing the impact or the injury caused to a pedestrian in case of a frontal collision. Speaking of safety, the European second generation Duster gets 4 airbags, but the aging platform shows a poor score in the 3-star Euro NCAP rating. The Indian Duster was notorious for a poor score too, earning 0 to 2 stars at the global NCAP tests. The new norms have now included dual airbags and ABS with EBD in the Duster standard kit. The top trims that are spec'd with a touchscreen infotainment system also get a reversing camera. The European Duster gets an all-around camera, which wouldn't have been hard to integrate in the Indian Facelift too. Considering its platform sibling, the Nissan Kicks gets it as well. The infotainment is compatible with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but the look and feel of the system isn't very different from the previous unit. It has a minimalist design and the large icons make it easy to use. With the infotainment placed so low on the center console, having these big icons really helps because that also means that you can use some of the functions without always having to take your eyes off the road. Some of them are easily accessible, you know where they are in terms of the layout. So that way it's quite easy. But then again, it's not the most intuitive infotainment, or rather it's not even the most intuitive cabin in terms of the functions, the switches or the controls. In fact, the placement of the switches and functions has always been a grey area for the Duster, and that yet remains the fly in the ointment. To take your attention away from these shortcomings, they've given the dashboard a bit of a facelift too. But the panel gaps and the scratchy plastics remind you that this is a low-cost car. Despite the use of low-end materials, the Duster doesn't feel like it's flimsy, doesn't feel like it's poorly put together. Of course, there are better cars in the segment and the low-cost engineering within this car is evident, but then it still has a sense of security, a sense of being solid underneath, and that is what I really like about this car. It's not a Gurkha or a Thar level of hardcore, but then it gives you the confidence to thrash this car around even in our Indian road conditions. So bad roads, slippery roads, trails, it handles all of that quite well. Now for those kind of conditions, I would prefer, as always, the Duster AWD. That's my pick of the entire lineup, especially in conditions like these where the highway is slippery, where I'm heading to the trails, I'm heading for some adventure driving in that sense. The Duster AWD would make a lot of sense. Unfortunately, however, that's not the variant that I'm driving. This is the front-wheel driven diesel manual. The other choices include a diesel AMT, a petrol manual and a petrol CVT. Both the engines are quite peppy. But the petrol is the one to go for if you would rather drive in the city thanks to its more instantaneous throttle response and superior refinement. The diesel's stocky nature makes it a better choice for road trips and highway runs. And since that is the only one to get an AWD in, it is my choice. The clutch pedal on the diesel variant, it's not very springy, but it is a bit heavy, so it does get cumbersome in the city use. And on this particular car, the brake pedal feel, it's a bit grabby. That's not what I remember of the Duster. So I don't know if it's something to do with the update that has been given to this model or it's something to do with this particular car that I'm driving, but they do seem a little grabby. But neither of these two things are unnerving, it's just a matter of getting used to, and once you're there, it's not a big problem at all. The European Duster gets the option of a dual clutch automatic, but apart from quicker shift times, it apparently doesn't have any major advantages or efficiency gains over the AMT in the Indian Duster. What you would miss out on though is the lighter and the more convenient electronic power steering, which the Duster and its siblings badly need. Now, continuing with the older platform of the Duster means that you still get the big fly in the ointment that we always keep talking about, which is the steering. It is nice and precise when you want it to, but there's also a lot of kickback from it. So when you are tackling bends, when there is a hint of understeer, or when you're going over undulated surfaces, poor roads, there is plenty of kickback that you receive on the steering, and that's not to everyone's liking. In fact, sometimes it can even end up hurting you a bit. That's how sudden or violent that kickback can feel on certain kinds of roads. And apart from that, there's no real thing that I really could point out and say this is not what I like about the Duster. I think it's a very likable car. In fact, it still remains one of my most favorite cars this side of 20 lakh rupees, and that is down to its practicality, its capabilities and everything that it has to offer. So coming back to why hasn't Renault brought the new model to the Indian market? Why have they continued with the older one? Well, I believe that it just didn't make any financial sense given the kind of sales that the Duster has at the moment. It's not what it used to be in the past. The sales have dwindled quite a bit, and that is because this car just doesn't feel as sophisticated as some of the new arrivals, some of the newer vehicles that have entered this segment. And the problem is, the new Duster that is being sold in the global market isn't very sophisticated either. The advancements or the improvements that it has over this particular Duster aren't significant enough to make it a sophisticated vehicle, and they aren't significant enough to justify the kind of investment that Renault would have to make on that vehicle to be able to sell it in the Indian market. So there you have it. That's the reason that the new vehicle isn't here. What they need to improve sales, what they need to counter the newer vehicles that have entered the segment is a more sophisticated vehicle, a more sophisticated offering. And I believe that will only come with the third generation Duster that is already in the works. I'm told it's based on an all-new modular platform that will be a more sophisticated car, that will be an easier car to live with in terms of its urban duties as compared to this, which feels a little more utilitarian. So there you have it. That's the vehicle that's coming, but that is still some time away, 2021 at least. So if you need a Duster right now, this is all that you get. And if you were to choose a Duster right now, like I said, my choice would be the all-wheel drive variant. That is the vehicle, or that is the Duster that ticks all the boxes for me this side of 20 lakh rupees. In fact, I like it so much that I believe that it is better, or it trumps its other siblings like the Terrano, the Capture or the Nissan Kicks. So from that point of view, that's the all-rounder within this particular family. So if you are shopping within this particular family, that is the one to go for, the Duster AWD.